Introduction to James. When Christian believers gather in churches, everything that can go wrong, sooner or later, does. Outsiders, on observing this, conclude that there's nothing to the religion business except perhaps business, and dishonest business at that. Insiders see it differently. Just as a hospital collects the sick under one roof and labels them as such, the church collects sinners. Many of the people outside the hospital are every bit as sick as the ones inside, but their illnesses are either undiagnosed or disguised. It's similar with sinners outside the church. So Christian churches are not, as a rule, model communities of good behavior. They are rather places where human misbehavior is brought out in the open, faced, and dealt with. The letter of James shows one of the church's early pastors skillfully going about his work of confronting, diagnosing, and dealing with areas of misbelief and misbehavior that had turned up in congregations committed to his care. Deep and living wisdom is on display here, wisdom both rare and essential. Wisdom is not primarily knowing the truth, although it certainly includes that. It is skill in living. For what good is a truth if we don't know how to live it? What good is an intention if we can't sustain it? According to church traditions, James carried the nickname Old Camel Knees because of thick calluses built up on his knees. Oh my goodness, hold on. From many years of determined prayer. Oh my goodness. The prayer is foundational to the wisdom. Prayer is always foundational to wisdom. It was customary for the sender of a letter to list his credentials up front. James identified himself simply as a slave of God and the Master Jesus. He neglected to mention that he was Jesus' brother. In an era when family ties counted for a lot. And the leader of the original church in Jerusalem, during Jesus' lifetime, James and the rest of the family had been embarrassed by their loony brother, gosh, the traveling preacher healer. But when the resurrected Jesus appeared to him in person, James came to grips with how wrong he'd been. Who is this to? They were probably Jewish followers of Jesus outside Palestine. Some may have been among the earliest believers who were driven out of Jerusalem just a few years after Jesus' resurrection, and who were thereby forced to take the message of Jesus wherever they settled. When was this written? Between AD 45 and 50, or around AD 60. The Iceni, a Celtic tribe in eastern Britain, had been trading with the Romans across the English Channel for nearly a century when the Romans invaded Britain in AD 43. The Iceni king, Prasutagus, the Iceni king Prasutagus remained a rich client of Rome, but when he died in 1860, Rome's military governor for Britain tightened the screws on the Iceni. What is this word name? Boudica? Or Boadicea? What did I say? Boadicea. widow of Prestigius. I'm sorry, hold on. Boudicca, widow of Prestigius, and queen of Iceni, led a revolt after she and her daughters were violated. Her forces burned the 3 major Roman towns, killing thousands before the Romans suppressed and resettled them in a town now called Castor St. Edmunds. That was just the introduction. Okay, James chapter 1. I, James, am a slave of God and the Master Jesus, writing to the 12 tribes scattered to kingdom come. Hello! Faith under pressure. Consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. You know that under pressure, your faith life is forced out into the open and shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work so you become mature and well-developed, not deficient in any way. If you don't know what you're doing, pray to the Father. He loves to help. You'll get his help and won't be condescended to when you ask for it. Ask boldly, believingly, without a second thought. People who quote worry their prayers are like wind-whipped waves. Don't think you're going to get anything from the Master that way. Adrift at sea, keeping all your options open. When down and outers get a break, cheer. And when the arrogant rich are brought down to size, cheer. Prosperity is as short-lived as a wildflower, so don't ever count on it. You know that as soon as the sun rises, pouring down its scorching heat, the flower withers, its petals wilt, and before you know it, that beautiful face is a barren stem. Well, that's a picture of the, quote, prosperous life. At the very moment everyone is looking on in admiration, it fades away to nothing. Anyone who meets a testing challenge head on and manages to stick it out is mighty fortunate. For such persons, that's my cat having the zoomies. For such persons loyally in love with God, let me reread that one. Anyone who meets a testing challenge head on and manages to stick it out is mighty fortunate. For such persons loyally in love with God, the reward is life and more life. Don't let anyone under pressure to give in to evil say, God is trying to trip me up. God is impervious to evil, and he puts evil in no one's way. The temptation to give in to evil comes from us and only us. We have no one to blame but the leering, seducing flare-up of our own lust. Lust gets pregnant and has a baby, sin. Sin grows up to adulthood and becomes a real killer. So, my very dear friends, don't get thrown off course. Every desirable and beneficial gift comes out of heaven. The gifts are rivers of light cascading down from the from the Father of light. There is nothing deceitful in God, nothing two-faced, nothing fickle. He brought us to life using the true word, showing us off as the crown of all his creatures. So act on what you hear. Post this at all the intersections, dear friends. Lead with your ears, follow up with your tongue, and let anger straggle along in the rear. God's righteousness doesn't grow from human anger, so throw all spoiled virtue and cancerous evil in the garbage. In simple humility, let our gardener, God, landscape you with the word, making a salvation garden of your life. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you are a listener when you're anything but. Letting the word go in one ear and out the other. Act on what you hear. Those who hear and don't act are like those who glance in the mirror, walk away, and 2 minutes later have no idea who they are and what they look like. But whoever catches a glimpse of the revealed counsel of God, the free life, even out of the corner of his eye, and sticks with it, is no distracted scatterbrain, but a man or a woman of action. That person will find delight and affirmation in the action. Anyone who sets himself up as, quote, religious by talking a good game is self-deceived. This kind of religion is hot air, and only hot air. Real religion, the kind that passes muster before God the Father, is this. Reach out to the homeless and loveless in their plight, and guard against corruption from the godless world.